One of the coolest but underappreciated and underutilized characters in the Sonic series has to be the Princess of the Soul Empire and the Guardian of the Soul Emeralds, known as Blaze the Cat. In my opinion, Blaze the Cat has always been my personal favorite female character of the cast. She's not only one of the most powerful, confident, and loyal characters in the Sonic series, but she also has some of the coolest powers that the series has ever seen as well. She not only has the ability to run just as fast as Sonic as we can see in games like Sonic Rush, but she also has the power of pyrokinesis where she has the ability to control fire. And her pyrokinesis abilities are also doubled whenever she calls upon the Soul Emeralds, which is equivalent to her dimension's Chaos Emeralds, where instead of turning into Super Blaze, she actually turns into the super form known as Burning Blaze. This is by far one of the coolest transformations that any Sonic character has gone through. While all of that sounds super cool and definitely one of the coolest characters that the series has to offer, this character is truly very underutilized by Sega, as she has only made a few appearances in any of Sonic media. But of the appearances that she has had, which one is the best version and characterization of Blaze the Cat? Well, in this video, I'm going to find that answer, as I'm going to be ranking every version of Blaze the Cat that has ever made an appearance in any Sonic media. Much like my other ranking videos, I'm going to be throwing them all into a tier list and ranking every Blaze until I find which one is my favorite. Some of the rules, much like my other ranking videos that I go off of, is I'm not going to be ranking any mobile games, and I'm also not going to be ranking any variations that come from Sonic Speed Simulator. Those games just don't have much to build off when it comes to story, and more or less it's just a model put into a game. And the only other rule that I go by is I try to rank as much off the story and their personality in any piece of media that they have been in. That goes for games, comics, or even shows or movies. However, like I have previously said already in this video, Blaze doesn't make a lot of appearances. So there are definitely going to be times where I judge a little bit of my opinion on the gameplay of Blaze the Cat in that game. But with the rules and everything out of the way, let's rank every Blaze the Cat. Kicking things off is going to be the infamous Sonic 06. Now, Blaze the Cat's characterization in this game is very odd. While we will get into the Rush games later on in the video, Sonic 06 basically takes everything that we know from Sonic Rush about Blaze the Cat and just basically throws it out the window. As we know, Blaze is a princess from a different dimension and the guardian of the Soul Emeralds. In Sonic 06, she is more or less just Silver's imaginary therapist friend. As in the game, she is a huge part to play in Silver the Hedgehog's story, where in most of the story that we typically actually see her follow Silver around and basically give her opinions on the matter of what Silver is trying to do, and that is trying to stop the Iblis trigger that he thinks is Sonic the Hedgehog. This is obviously untrue, as we learn later on in the game that Mephiles the Dark basically puts Silver and Blaze up to killing the Iblis trigger, who he pretends to be Sonic. But instead of being from a different dimension, she's actually from the distant future with Silver. A future that is basically seen in ruin and taken over by Iblis, where in the many cutscenes and also stages like Crisis City and Flame Core, we can see everything is basically up in flames. I think it's pretty crazy to think that Blaze basically relies on fire as her main ability of not only running, but also all of her attack abilities, and somehow isn't able to harness upon any of the lava or the fire around there. I think that would have set up for a really cool moment to see her potentially even call upon Iblis's flames and take it and use it against him. But like I said, Blaze just doesn't really make sense in this game. But throughout the rest of this game, Blaze actually doesn't interact with anybody besides Silver or Mephiles in this entire game. And technically Sonic, but she never says a word to him. And I think there's a reason for that. I think it's not to what confuse what happened in Sonic Rush, as Sega would have to go out and basically explain what's going on and why Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, or anybody remembers Blaze the Cat at all. Like, you would think after everything that happened in Sonic Rush that Sonic would instantly recognize Blaze and they would instantly just get together and be friends again. That just never happens, and I think that's the biggest reason on why Blaze just never interacts with anybody. But it also is very weird that Silver is not only the big debut character of this game, but his story just never basically puts Blaze in a situation to meet any of them. And the one moment that she probably would have actually gotten to meet all of them once again is actually in the end of the game, where Mephiles takes over and becomes Solaris. But at the end of Silver's story, Blaze basically sacrifices herself and dies. It is never truly explained what really goes on in this moment and what happens to Blaze. It could very well be that she is going to her own dimension, and since she never interacted with anybody in the 06 cast, maybe she's going to the Soul dimension now, and Rush just theoretically takes place after the events of 06. but I think even then that's kind of a stretch. But her whole idea is to basically seal Iblis away and restore their future. The funny thing is that's kind of all just for nothing. Because in the end, Mephiles still is able to rejoin with Iblis and become the sun god Solaris. As we see Mephiles just travel back to the present time that we know with Sonic and kill him, and then it allows Iblis to be freed with Elise crying. So not only does Blaze not interact with anybody in the 06 cast, not adding anything to her character or her relationships with them, she also sacrifices herself for literally nothing as Silver gets teleported into the end of the game, where Iblis and Mephiles end up rejoining into Solaris once again. Sonic 06 is not only a mess because of the gameplay, but there are just some points in the story you just kind of want to bash your head into a wall and just say, what were they thinking? And I think Blaze the Cat is a really big way of looking at just how bad the storytelling is in Silver's story. I think Silver's story has some amazing highlights and some really great moments, but Blaze's moments really just don't make sense to me. And what's funny enough is when Takashi Iizuka was asked why nobody remembers Blaze in the events of 06, he basically said everyone has, like, amnesia. Kinda just seems like a cop-out answer if you're asking me, of him just kinda breezing past the question as he knows it doesn't really make any sense, but whatever. I will say when it comes to gameplay, although that 06 is a little bit of a mess, Blaze actually has the most fun gameplay and is the most fun playable character in the entire game. She not only is just as fast as Sonic and Shadow in the game, but she also has some crazy different flame abilities that she can actually use in the game. It's just unfortunate that we rarely ever get to play as her, but the moments that we actually do, they actually are some of the most fun times that I actually ever had playing the original 06. While I hate to start off a list like this, I am going to have to put Sonic 06 plays in D rank. Next is the first installment of the storybook series in Sonic and the Secret Rings. While Blaze the Cat is never actually in the story of Sonic and the Secret Rings in any way, she is actually available inside of the party mode of the game, which was actually a huge part of my childhood and I think doesn't get enough recognition for just how good the party mode was actually in this game. If Sega decided to make a standalone game that was inspired off of this, I would absolutely love to see it. This one's a bit hard to judge because there isn't really too much to say about Blaze in this, as she's just simply an unlockable character after obtaining 105 Fire Souls in the game. But hey, it's good to see her in the game to any capacity, but I'll at least throw her in C rank. Next is the sequel in the storybook series of Sonic and the Black Knight. While this isn't technically Blaze the Cat, this is Sir Percival, a member of the Knights of the Round Table. Or like the other characters like Lancelot and Gawain, this is just simply a doppelganger that seems to resemble the likeness of Blaze the Cat. But while this isn't technically Blaze, this is still one of her coolest appearances in any Sonic game. I absolutely love her look and the way that her armor and also the way that her sword looks in this game. Where instead of using a more bulky sword that you see Sonic, Shadow, or Knuckles use, Percival actually uses more of a sword that looks more like a rapier, where it's a little bit more of a skinny look. But while many might look at that as a disadvantage opposed to the other Knights of the Round Table, Caliburn actually implies that Sir Percival might actually be the strongest of the Knights of the Round Table. Where not only is she the last Knight of the Round Table you actually end up facing in a boss fight of the game, Caliburn actually warned Sonic as well before fighting her, saying that one mistake could lead to his last. Percival's personality is also very similar to Blaze, where she is very loyal to who she is. Percival is a Knight of the Round Table and serves King Arthur. While she has her doubts in King Arthur from the beginning of the game, she's to the very end stays extremely loyal to him and does her job every step of the way. And while many times we actually don't see a lot of the Knights of the Round Table, we only see them in very small cutscenes, I think Percival by far has the most character development of any of the Knight of the Round Table as well. As while she does have her concerns about King Arthur and also is still very loyal to him, when she sees the error of her ways and also what's truly going on with Merlina and King Arthur, she very easily switches sides and does what's right for the people and its kingdom. And she can easily see that Sonic is truly a hero deep down and not the person that they should be fighting against. Sonic and Blaze has always been personally one of my favorite duos in the entire series, not only being a huge fan of the Sonic Rush series, but also the two just always felt like they had great chemistry together and also contrast the other extremely well. A duo that I think that should definitely come back in the future. When it comes to her actual fighting style, while it is similar in the sense that she does use fire powers as she does in the normal games like Blaze does, she does have a very different sword style when it comes to any of the Knights of the Round Table or even Sonic, where she's almost using her rapier like she is fencing, but also ends up using her fire tornado attack multiple times while using her. A really big bonus about the game as well is you can actually end up at some points using the Knights of the Round Table as playable characters, and Percival's Soul Surge technique is actually called Flame of Percheon. Now I'm probably saying that incorrectly, but that's what it's called. At least that's how I would pronounce it. You can tell me if I'm wrong in the comments. This is just basically, like I was saying, a big flame tornado that surrounds her, and you can just breeze through any enemy in your path. It is a bunch of fun to use while using her in gameplay, or even in the multiplayer mode of the game. While I definitely think that Lancelot is probably my favorite when it comes to design for character, I do think that personality-wise, Sir Percival is my personal favorite Knight of the Round Table. With not only staying very true to who Blaze the Cat is, but also seeming like more of the brains of the whole operation, and also still being what seems like the strongest knight of them all, outside of, obviously, Sonic himself. So I think Sir Percival is an easy A rank. Next on the list is the Mario and Sonic Olympic Games. Blaze actually ends up being an all-around character and is playable throughout all of the Mario and Sonic games. And it's great to really see her in all of the games as a playable character, where a lot of great ones actually got left out of them. And while there isn't too much to really talk about when it is just simply kind of more of a gameplay game, there's not really too much of a story besides the DS versions, I will say the one really cool thing that they do for all of the female characters inside of the Mario and Sonic games is give them different outfits based on what event that they're competing in. So what's really cool for Blaze is she has a different outfit for fencing, horse racing, boxing, surfing, gymnastics, basically any event you can think of, she has a different outfit for it, and all of them look super cool and fitting for Blaze, and I love that they decided to do that for the female characters. I do think it would have been kind of cool to maybe see some different outfits for some of the male characters, but it is a really cool thing that these characters have over the male characters. A lot of times it's just really fun to be able to use Blaze and just kind of see what outfit she's going to be wearing for that event, or any of the female characters for that fact. And I think just for that simple fact alone, I think that's an easy B rank. But let me know what your favorite outfit in Mario and Sonic is for Blaze in the comments. Next is Sonic Colors. A bit of an interesting appearance as she never actually appears in the console version of the game, but in the DS version of Sonic Colors, much like other characters, she ends up appearing in Sweet Mountain, where actually appearing alongside her is Silver. Listen, I'm not going to really try to make sense of why this is happening, and why even she is with Silver, considering that she died in Silver's future. And again, kind of going back to the 06 stuff, it's just really confusing. Is she from the future or a different dimension? I don't think Sonic Colors DS is really meant to go super in-depth and detail about that, and I think it's just kind of supposed to be a cool thing about playing the portable version is seeing all the characters appear in different locations of the game, because even characters like Shadow appear later on down the road. But basically she explains the reason that she is there. She was tending to a soul emerald when suddenly it began to glow and she was mysteriously transported to Egg Planet Park, where she then meets up with Sonic and Tails after destroying some badniks. What's a really cool thing in the dialogue here is Tail actually asks how Marine is doing. Again, the thing that just doesn't really make sense because she's with Silver at this point. And is that implying that Marine is from the future now? Like, I just don't really get what's going on here. But like I said, I'm not going to try to make sense of it all. But basically while they're there, Silver wants to ride one of the amusement park rides, and Blaze decides to tag along with him. Later on down the road in the last mission for Blaze and Silver, Silver points out that he feels an odd synchronization with Blaze, meaning that he actually doesn't even know who Blaze really is at this point, other than that he just kind of feels a weird kind of connection to her in some way. And I think in a way this is just kind of trying to imply that the Rush stuff did still happen alongside the 06 stuff. So it could even potentially be that they're trying to imply that when Blaze allegedly died in the end of 06, she ended up going to her own dimension, and she has no recollection of what actually happened during that time, and neither does Silver. Or maybe that this is even a different Silver than the one that we know from 06. You can really see just how this time travel stuff just really is hard to really make sense of in any series that has ever done time travel. There's always loopholes with time travel, and they honestly shouldn't have toyed with it in the Sonic series because there is no making sense of it. And it would be cool if they decided to make a Silver or a Blaze game and kind of went more into detail and tried to kind of connect those strings together, but who knows if they'll ever do that. Seeing Blaze and Silver back up together is always a great moment to see, and also seeing Sonic and Tails go alongside with them. I wish there was more moments like this even in mainline games where if even they're not a big part of the story, that they're still kind of there for some side stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and put Sonic Colors DS for Blaze in B rank. This would definitely be a little bit higher on my list if maybe some of the time travel stuff made a little bit more sense, but I'm going to try to look past that a little bit. Next up on the list is the anniversary title in Sonic Generations, where in the game Blaze actually attends and helps prepare for Sonic's surprise birthday party. It really seems like they're pulling out all the friends and all the stops to really give Sonic the biggest birthday he has ever had, even making them travel across dimensions and time to basically be at Sonic's party, which is kind of crazy to think. How she even got an invitation to this party, who knows? But of course, it's always great to see Blaze here. And what's even really cool is when she gets sucked into white space, they actually ended up putting her in front of Crisis City, obviously being a future that she was very heavily a part of in Sonic 06. When saving Blaze, she actually doesn't have any different dialogue when it comes to Sonic Generations versus Sonic X Shadow Generations, being that they basically rewrote most of the dialogue in the Sonic X Shadow Generations remaster, with her basically just saying that she dislikes relying on others but is grateful for Sonic helping her, as the monster, known as the Time Eater, is beyond her skills. Pretty simple dialogue for the modern Sonic rescue, but I actually do really like the classic Sonic one where she's basically asking him if he looks less spiky. Just kind of a little fun moment between classic Sonic and Blaze. And I know I bring this up with every ranking video when it comes to the generation characters, on why they weren't more help against the Time Eater in the end. Considering just the history of Sonic and Blaze in the past, where Blaze is obviously most notably one of the strongest characters in the entire series, not only being a guardian of the Soul Emeralds, but also being an entire princess of an entire kingdom. Considering that she is here, where are the Soul Emeralds in white space? And it would have been cool to maybe see some of the other characters join in on kind of transforming and helping Sonic out. Like, logically, that just kind of makes sense considering how strong she is, and if she has the Soul Emeralds constantly on her, being that she is the Guardian, why can't she turn into Burning Blaze at this moment and help fight alongside the Sonics? And I know I've made this argument so many times with all the other characters saying that Shadow could have helped, Silver could have helped, Knuckles could have helped with all the ranking videos that I've done. But seriously, like, they really should have helped. It would have been a really cool moment to see almost like a whole Avengers Infinity War thing happen, where they all kind of join up and beat up on the main villain. I get that that probably would have been a lot more to program for the team, but at the end of the day, it just would have made more sense. And in a way, it kind of makes the character seem more weak than Sonic. I get it that Sonic's the main character and he's supposed to be the strongest, but at the end of the day, these characters are just as strong, if not stronger, in many things. I think Burning Blaze at the very most could definitely rival against a super form, as it seems like that is her version of a super form. It's just that they're different emeralds from a different dimension. Obviously, we don't know a bunch about it, and trying to say that it's going to be equivalent or stronger than it is probably just a big argument of an answer we don't truly know. And much like the other rankings, like I was saying, I think that there's no other spot that I can really put this in besides D rank. I think this Blaze could have just been so much more in my opinion, and she deserved so much more. But moving on into the Sonic Riders series. While Blaze isn't in the original Riders game, she does make an appearance as a playable character in Sonic Riders Zero Gravity. That is, as a unlockable character. She never is actually part of the main story. But what's really cool is she does get her own design and even her own Arc of the Cosmos in the game. I do really love the way that she looks in her rider's design. I think her boots are really cool. I think her whole bodysuit that she has on is super cool. And I think it's super unique that she basically wears her Arc of the Cosmos like a necklace, which is super cool and very unique. I don't think any other character that I know of wears it as like a necklace like she does. But it's very fitting for Blaze. I would say when it comes to her extreme gear, it isn't really anything special in my opinion. She is a speed character, so the board doesn't change into anything at all like the flying or the power characters. But like I was saying with the Arc of the Cosmos, where it's around her neck as a necklace, whenever you decide to basically use the gravity feature in the game during a race, it actually looks like she maybe rips it off and places it in her hand to be able to use it, which is really cool, and then basically puts it on back like a necklace. How she has all the time to basically wrap it around her neck again doesn't make sense to me, but hey, I guess it works and still looks pretty badass at that. And when it comes to free riders, while I absolutely despise everything when it comes to gameplay about this game, trying to look past that, she actually isn't even a part of that story as well, unfortunately. I think it would have alternatively actually been really cool if she decided to join Team Rose for a one-off in this game. As we know, in Team Rose, Vector actually takes the place of Big the Cat in this game. I don't really know why they decided that, because Vector just doesn't make any sense for this team. Blaze would have made more sense, because then it could have been an all-girls team in my opinion, and that would have been really cool, but the Freerider story also is not something that's super special. Just kind of considering what could have been a cool team matchup, Blaze would have definitely fit a lot better than Vector on this team. Or maybe better yet, maybe consider putting Vector on his own team as the Chaotix? But whatever, this obviously isn't a ranking Vector. We'll get to that in the future. But Blaze is very similar in this game as she is in Zero Gravity. Very same looking board, and also same design. They just obviously don't have the Arc of the Cosmos in this game, as that isn't a feature in this game, unfortunately. There isn't too much to say about the riders besides the actual design of Blaze. Her design does look good, and I definitely have a little bit of a bias when it comes to any of the riders' designs, as they all look incredible. It's some of the most stylish moments that any of the Sonic characters have. But when comparing her to the likes of other characters, I think that she's probably towards the bottom of my list when it comes to riders' design. Even though the Arc of the Cosmos as a necklace is still badass in my opinion. I'm going to put Sonic Riders Blaze in C rank. But just as a side note, the way that Sonic Riders Tournament Edition made her look and also play is significantly and miles better than any way that Sega actually did it. So definitely recommend checking out Blaze in the Tournament Edition if you haven't already. Next up is the other racing title that she actually ends up being a part of is Team Sonic Racing. Where in this game, she basically receives an invitation in her dimension to join a Grand Prix, where then she teams up in a team with Silver and Vector. Again, why is Vector here? I have no idea, instead of doing someone like Marine or honestly anybody at this point. I think that Vector is just kind of thrown into any team that just needs a person. Like, you kind of feel bad for the dude at this point. Like, this guy has a team. Like, he's one of the only characters that consistently has a team. Like, where are Espio and Charmy during all of this? But Blaze being with Silver once again is always a great thing, as they are truly one of the best duos that there's ever been in the series, like I've already said. Again, when it comes to racing games, every time they've tried to really do a story besides the original Sonic Riders and Zero Gravity, the stories just aren't super good and a little confusing at times. But Team Vector is a part of the story, and yes, that's really their team name is Team Vector. What's funny is Blaze was actually going to go home and reject basically joining to Donpa's Grand Prix, but somehow Vector convinced her to join his team. So that's, I guess, how it came to be that she joined Team Vector. Again, I gotta say it again. Where the hell are the Chaotix? Isn't that kind of like Espio's thing, is kind of keeping Vector in line whenever he is kind of getting into trouble? Like I said, we'll get to Vector a different point. I'm getting a little bit too off track with Vector here. When it comes to story, I would say that Blaze or even Silver don't add too much to the story, other than they just kind of have a hunch that Donpa is up to something in the end. And obviously we learned that Eggman is basically using Donpa, and Blaze and the rest of her team basically help out in defeating Eggman in the end. And that's kind of really all there is to her side of the story. She has some interactions with characters like Amy, Silver, and Vector, but it just kind of basically consists of them telling each other, oh, be careful, there's something else going on here. We have a hunch that something else is happening besides this Grand Prix. And that's really all there is to Blaze and her team in this entire story, other than her just helping out in the end. But when it comes to her actual design of her vehicle, I think it's actually really cool and super unique, as a lot of the characters' vehicles kind of tend to look very similar looking, where Blaze's is actually really fitting for her character, but also is very unique looking from any other character. She rides the Royal Chariot. This is also the same vehicle that you might have seen in Sonic Racing CrossWorlds, the most recent of Sonic Racing games. This is a really cool looking vehicle, and I absolutely love it. And it's even a vehicle that I end up using from time to time in Sonic Racing CrossWorlds, just for how cool of looking a vehicle it is. So definitely get some brownie points for just having a cool car in this. This obviously is ended up being destroyed just like everybody else's vehicle in the end of the story, but somehow she gets it back for racing CrossWorlds. Maybe the Dawnbot just builds her another one. So for the simple fact of just getting brownie points of having a cool vehicle, I'll at least put her in C rank. Would you believe me if I already said that we're pretty damn close to almost all of the games being ranked? Pretty wild how underutilized one of the coolest characters in the series is. But next, moving on, is Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog. The first thing I will say before even getting into any of the story part of Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, Blaze's outfit and the fan that she actually ends up having in her hand for most of the time that she is seen in this game is so good. I love the jewelry that she has on her coat and the fur on it, and then the fan that she has having fire all over it is so fitting and so damn cool looking. I want this fan in real life. But when it comes to story, Blaze is basically a part of the crew as she was invited as a member of Amy's birthday. You can kind of see her royalty kind of come out a lot during the story as she is very calm and very, very formal in the entire experience of being on the train. But it kind of is cool to kind of see somewhat of that formal kind of princess side to her. And there's even some points where she kind of opens up with the character, telling her that it's really nice to be around friends. But it is somewhat of an unusual feeling because she is so used to working alone in her own dimension, but she really likes the idea and just the time spent with all of her friends. So it's really cool to be able to see not only a really cool outfit, but also see Blaze kind of open up and kind of see some more of that princess side of her. What's really cool is even though this game is very short, we do really see a lot of Blaze and just kind of see her be herself. But not only that, she also is a big part on solving what actually happened to Sonic in the end of this. She actually is the one that truly ends up finding out that Sonic wasn't actually murdered and the real culprit is the train itself. It kind of seems like she's the only one that really just kind of stays calm during the whole thing and kind of really makes sense of what the hell is going on this train. It is truly kind of the MVP at the end of the day besides the actual playable character that you play as during this. One really cute moment inside of the entire story that I think is really cool is actually the moment where you're trying to plan everything out with Rouge's heist. But basically it comes up to where you're trying to plan everything out and one of the options ends up coming up as pretending to be Blaze's spouse. And you can kind of just see how high maintenance Blaze really is. With her instantly saying that you'd be marrying into the royal family, what is your heritage? With her instantly just taking this super seriously. I think this is fitting for Blaze because she is kind of a little stuck up at times, being that she is a royal. And takes things way too seriously as you're obviously just trying to pretend and make a plan, but she's just taking it way too seriously. And then basically telling the main character that they dress too plain for her, and then that you would need a complete refashioning immediately to be her spouse. And then this basically just ends up with the main character shutting this whole idea down instantly after seeing Blaze kind of judging the main character and the whole idea of trying to be her spouse. Just a kind of cute moment that is a little hidden in the game that I think a lot of people might not have seen in it. But I remember coming across this after a while of playing the game as I never got to the point where this was even an option for me as I went a different direction in completing the game. But I do really like this moment with Blaze as it kind of shows her true colors and who she really is deep down. And that's the best part of this game. I really love the way that they write Blaze in this game. She not only has a really cool looking design, but also it really just shows who she truly is deep down, and she really kind of shows her true colors and opens up with the main character a few times in the game. I would love to see more of this side from Blaze in the future if we ever get her more in other games. But I think for Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, A rank is a perfect place for Blaze. But that does bring up her most recent game that she's been a part of in Sonic Racing CrossWorlds. Sonic Racing CrossWorlds at the end of the day has zero story in it, and while Blaze has her normal design like she always does and has the same type of vehicle that she had in Team Sonic Racing, the one thing that's unique to every character in the game is actually going to be the Grand Prix rival interactions. Where in the game you can choose your rival in the Grand Prix and each character will have a unique dialogue with any of the characters that can be rivals. And of course, Blaze has many, considering how many playable characters are actually in this game. And for the most part, she actually treats most of the characters with pretty big respect, and I think that's kind of somewhat of her royal side showing, as she is always very, very calm and cool-headed, but seems to respect all of the racers in the race. At the end of the day, this game does really show just how kind-hearted of a character and pure of heart character that Blaze really is. I don't think that she truly has a shred of evil or bad intent inside of her. Like, I would say that she's even more pure than Sonic. Even with a lot of the villains, she's just pretty nice to them for the most part, where they'll say pretty mean things to her, but they're just basically saying, oh, if you try to do anything during or even after the race, like coming to my dimension, I will stop you. Like, she doesn't fear them in any way. The only person that she kind of gets a little bit serious and kind of a little mean against is Zavok, surprisingly. A character that you wouldn't really think because they never have actually interacted in any way, being that Zavok is fairly newer of a character from Lost World, and Blaze obviously, like as we have noticed in this list, has not been a big part of any of these games. With Zavok kind of saying that she is another flame user and saying that they're somewhat of the same, with Blaze just basically responding saying, we're not remotely the same in any way, like don't even associate me with you. And you can even kind of hear the tone in her voice, like she's a lot more serious about this and a little bit more mean about it. This is about the only time of all the interactions I've watched with her where she kind of gets like that. And while I do like her interactions, I would say comparing it to a lot of other characters, they're alright. The only one that I super love is actually the Blaze and Charmy interaction.
Your fire powers are so cool! I wanna try! Set me on fire! Set me on fire! You shouldn't say such things, and it certainly doesn't work like that. Just focus on the race at hand, won't you?
I kind of wish that Blaze would get a little bit more into them or a little bit more nostalgia into it. Like, it would have been cool if there was a little bit more nostalgia into like the Silver interaction or the Sonic one. The Sonic one, she's just basically saying that Sonic always pushes her to her limit or to do her very best. Like, it is fitting, but what if there was like kind of like a Sonic Rush like reference in there? Like, that would have been the perfect moment to do it. But then again, people would probably get mad about the whole Ian Flynn always making references the whole game, so... Can Sega ever truly win with their writing? Not really. But Blaze is great in this game. I love to see her in new games, and I hope that people continue to use her on the track, and I hope that Sega continues to use her as a character again. Especially in spin-offs, like those are the perfect games to put her in, but also I would love to see her potentially come back in a mainline or other spin-offs that decide to come out in the future. Like, it would be cool if like a Frontier-styled game or in the next open world game that they decide to do, if like there was a side mission where you accidentally get teleported to Blaze's dimension or she gets teleported there and you kind of have a whole side mission with her, but it is what it is. Like I said, they should really do a Silver game. I've advocated for this for a very long time now, being on this channel. It would be awesome to see Blaze be a huge part to play and a playable character in that, as she has obviously been a big part of Silver's history. But also it'd be a great way to kind of put them back together as a duo. But for Sonic Racing CrossWorlds, I'm going to put her in B rank. I think some of her rival interactions could have been a little bit better, and it would have been a little bit cooler to kind of see her lose her cool just a little bit in there. Like, they wrote her kind of how the way she was in Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, where she is calm and collected and very level-headed, but there's definitely times where if you push the wrong buttons, she can kind of get a little bit snappy back at you and kind of some of her royal side shows off. But I think B rank is a great spot for her in this list. Now moving away from the games and moving on to the only other piece of media that Blaze has ever been featured in, which is the comics. And the first one I'm going to be starting with is, of course, the Archie Comics. And for the most part, I do really like that they keep Blaze very similar to herself that she is in the games. She again is very calm, very loyal, and is still the protector of the Soul Emeralds, a princess, and even is a little bit scared to let some people in at times. While the comics never truly go back and do anything with the Rush series, they only kind of mention it in some panels, they do still imply that the whole events of Rush and Rush Adventure did still happen. Now, Blaze is a character that isn't necessarily featured a bunch in the comics, and she's only in very few issues. But if I'm being entirely honest, when it comes to Archie Blaze, I wouldn't say that I entirely love her writing that she is given in the Archie comics. Now, I love that she has a lot of really cool interactions with characters like Sonic, Shadow, and even Team Rose of Amy and Cream, and even kind of becomes an honorary member of Team Rose in a few of the comics. And I really wish that they would kind of go a little bit more into depth with the friendship between Cream and Amy with Blaze. I think they're a great trio, and honestly, if Big isn't around, I think she's a really good alternative to putting in Team Rose. Kind of going back to my Sonic Freeriders team of Amy, Cream, and Vector, the Archie comics were way before that game, and they could have easily just put Blaze here instead. It would have just already made sense for people that read the comics. But you might be wondering, what am I really complaining about at this point, and why don't I like the writing of her? The thing is Blaze, in my opinion, at least in the games, has always been considered to be one of the strongest characters that is in the games. She not only has the Soul Emeralds allowing her to tap into Burning Blaze when she has all 7 of them, but she's also pretty on par when it comes to speed with Sonic, and also still has all of her flame abilities. And keep in mind, in her dimension, she's kind of really the only hero besides Marine helping out every now and then. Meaning, for the most part, she's taking on all the bad guys by herself for the most part, unless Sonic and friends kind of get teleported there or Marine steps in. But that's the thing, they don't really touch a whole lot on her world really ever, or even her personal life. The really cool thing that I like about the comics, and even the IDW comics, is they can take a lot of time, unlike the games, to really focus on a specific character and their personal lives. This is a thing I wish they would do with not only Blaze, but also Silver, and kind of focusing on their worlds at special moments, or even making their own issues just focusing directly on them for that issue. Blaze never truly gets that treatment. It'd be kind of cool to see what Blaze does on a day-to-day basis and how she fights bad guys in her world by herself, or even potentially even seeing what her personal life is like with her friends or what she does for fun. That's kind of the side of Blaze that I really wish we would see more often. As cool of a character as I think that she is, it would be kind of cool to see a little bit more about who she really is. Not the heroic princess that she kind of puts an act on for whenever she's in danger and needs to help out her friends. But to be fair, most of the time when we do see her, she's in Sonic's dimension, so she's a little bit out of her comfort zone. Or at least just in an area that she doesn't know 100% about. But the other thing that I really dislike about Archie Blaze, like I was saying, she's considered to be one of the most strongest characters in my opinion. That is not the case when it comes to the Archie comics. For whatever reason, considering that she had multiple writers in her time during Archie, she gets absolutely destroyed so many times in the comics, you would think that she's Metal Sonic at this point. It seems like every time she gets into a big fight, she ends up getting captured or just simply beat in a fight. And then someone has to come along and save her, which is typically actually Amy. Now don't get me wrong, when I eventually get to my ranking of Amy, I will talk about how much I love that they make her look so strong in the Archie comics. I've just always considered Blaze to be stronger than Amy, at least in my opinion, and somebody that is very independent and is usually smart at making her own decisions, and can kind of get her way around a battle by herself. It's just kind of weird that it seems like the writers, any chance they got to make Blaze lose in a fight, they basically did. The only time she actually ends up winning is the one time that Burning Blaze makes an appearance in the Archie comics against a pirate version of Metal Sonic. But even then, before she even went Burning Blaze, this pirate Metal Sonic absolutely destroys her, I think, like 2 or 3 times. Blaze does have some really good moments in the Archie comics. I really like the story of her trying to get the Soul Emeralds back when they're teleported to the Sonic dimension, where basically teams like Team Dark, Team Hooligan, the Babylon Rogues are all trying to get these emeralds. And she even has some really great dialogue and interaction with Shadow, where Shadow at first is told by Gunn to basically retrieve these emeralds to help them out. Shadow will basically come to his senses eventually throughout the story and actually ends up helping Blaze in the long run, help getting the emeralds back, because the emeralds cannot exist outside of her dimension, meaning basically her home will be destroyed. And Shadow is very understanding of that, and back in my Shadow ranking video, I explained how much I love Archie Shadow, and I absolutely love her interaction with Archie Shadow in the comics. Just like I was saying, it's a shame that we never get a whole lot on her side of the story sometimes, and more on her personal life, and also that she just is made out to seem really weak for some reason. And that's kind of the thing with Archie Blaze, is she has a lot of really high highs, but she has a lot of low lows. So I think B rank is a good spot for her, where she's just kind of in the middle. She has great moments, but there are definitely things that really hold her back from being an amazing character in these stories. Moving on into the other comic that she is a part of in the IDW Comics. While the IDW Comics are still going on, Blaze does appear from time to time in them. And the problem with Blaze is, I think, just the simple fact that Ian Flynn just kind of hates Blaze in a way. That's kind of the only way that I can really put it nicely, as Ian Flynn has stated in the past that he would like to completely erase Blaze's world. And I think in a way would just like to rewrite her being a part of Sonic's world, where she can then be always kind of a main part of the cast in it, or simply being that he just doesn't want to deal with the whole different dimension thing in there. However, it is a little cool that we do get to see somewhat of Blaze's dimension in there when Sonic gets teleported there, where basically Sonic loses his memories while being there, and Blaze basically taps into the Soul Emeralds, allowing him to get his memory back. It's a really short part of the IDW comics, but it is a little cool just to kind of see some of her world and what it's like. And for the most part in this, they actually make her look pretty damn strong at that. with not only being able to help out during somewhat of the Metal Virus arc, but also like I was saying where Sonic loses his memories, her tapping into the Soul Emeralds allowing him to regain his memories and stop Eggman. They at least don't have her just getting beat up every other issue like the Archie Comics did. And for the most part, her personality is pretty identical to how it is in the games. Also somewhat supporting my statement on saying that Ian Flynn basically hates Blaze's dimension, or just Blaze as a character. Like I said, he basically wants to erase Blaze's dimension, and even during the comics he basically off-screen kills all the villains in her world with the robot pirates. This whole statement of him kind of wanting to putting the end to the dimension for Blaze was made back on his podcast, the Bumblecast, and you can kind of see somewhat of that statement and kind of opinion that he has reflect maybe some of his writing in the IDW comics. So much so that even when these villains are gone from her world, she basically just lives in Sonic's dimension now. Well, she states that she's on vacation there, but she's there a decent amount just kind of being there. And I think that's kind of what he wants from Blaze in the long run, is her just to always be there and help out when she can. He then goes on to say basically there isn't much there for them to do, and also that it's not that different from Sonic's dimension. And I think the biggest thing I can say there is you guys never bother to even try with her dimension. She's never in games for her to have moments to talk about it or even see any flashbacks or any character development in that dimension. As we can already notice on this list, as I'm already getting towards the end of the amount of characterizations Blaze has, Blaze is just extremely underutilized for no reason at all, being that she is one of the coolest characters. In my opinion, like I've already said, I think she's the coolest female character that the Sonic series has to offer. And I think by far she has some of the most potential of any of the female characters, maybe besides like Amy or Surge. I just think, personally, I wish before introducing characters like Tangle, Whisper, and Surge, other female characters into the IDW comics, they would kind of re-explore somebody like Blaze and kind of give her a little bit more screen time and kind of a little bit more attention to her before introducing whole new characters that's just going to basically take time away from her. Don't get me wrong, I love characters like Tangle, Whisper, and Surge. I think they're great additions and really cool characters for the IDW comics. But Blaze is featured so little in the IDW comics as it kind of feels like that she could maybe take the place of them in some moments. Especially if he just wants to do the whole thing of writing off her dimension. So at this point, you might as well just do it and then allow her to be part of the main cast, if that's what he really wants. And honestly, if that just gets us to the point where Blaze can kind of be more part of the main cast, just kind of rewriting her or deleting her dimension basically, I'm okay with that. It's a shame that it was so underutilized and it wasn't properly taken care of in a good way by writing teams. While I disagree with this statement, it is what it is, and I want to see Blaze more, just as much as I would like to see Silver. IDW Blaze I'll also put in B rank, because she does have really good moments, but again, I think that the way she is written is pretty bad for the most part. She does have great moments with characters like Knuckles and even Sonic at times, and I think in the future for the IDW comics that she can still have some really cool moments, as obviously the comics are still going on to this day. Then believe it or not, we were actually at the end of our list. The only Blaze that I personally have left to rank is the one that I personally think is the best Blaze by far. Here's my list so far, and you can tell me where you agree or disagree in the comments below. I'd love to know your guys' opinions on all of these different characters of Blaze, and where you might think I'm wrong, or maybe even where you potentially agree with me on certain things. But with that being said, the best Blaze the Cat, in my opinion, has to be the Sonic Rush series Blaze the Cat. Believe it or not, her debut game is by far the best version of Blaze that we have ever gotten. And of any list that I've personally made so far, this has been easily the easiest one to pick in terms of which version I think is the best. Characters like Shadow, Knuckles, and even Metal Sonic, I really questioned on who I wanted to make the best version in my opinion. But for Blaze, when I started researching for this video, I instantly knew which version of Blaze is the best, and that's the Sonic Rush series. But basically in the main story of the first installment of Sonic Rush, Blaze gets teleported to Sonic's dimension. Basically after Dr. Eggman came to the Soul Dimension and stole the Soul Emeralds, the Soul Emeralds summoned Blaze through some type of space-time tear that led her to Sonic's universe. And much like we talked about in the Archie Comics, her dimension cannot live without the Soul Emeralds. So she hurries to get them back and instantly is trying to fight Eggman and try to get them back. As we all know, Blaze has a really hard time with allowing people into her life and even getting friends. being that she focuses on being the guardian of the Soul Emeralds and also being a princess in her dimension. But the one character that she instantly kind of opens up to and basically becomes her close friend and guide throughout Sonic Rush is Cream and Cheese. I really like that they decided to utilize Cream and Cheese a lot more in Sonic Rush, as Cream is another character that is really underutilized at times. But the relationship between Blaze and Cream is something that is awesome, and something that really just doesn't get talked about a lot or even brought up again. There are many times where they interact later on in the series like the comics, but they don't really have too much to say to each other, or I wouldn't even say that they are considered close friends many of the times. But I think she really is just taken back by just how open Cream really is towards Blaze from the beginning. So much so that almost towards the beginning of the game, Cream just invites Blaze over to her house. And many of the times that you have different interactions with the other Sonic characters in the game, Cream basically introduces Blaze into characters like Knuckles and Amy, where basically their interaction is just them kind of telling Blaze to seek out Sonic for help in achieving the Soul Emeralds and also defeating Dr. Eggman. And while it seems like that Blaze is definitely opening up towards a lot of these characters and kind of accepting them more, she still stays very true to herself and the person that we know as Blaze. For a lot of times she kind of denies even wanting to look for Sonic or even ask for his help as she can handle it on her own. And in a way, I think that Knuckles can kind of relate. While he definitely relies on Sonic a lot, being a fellow Guardian, I think he kind of understands that sometimes a Guardian just has to do their own things and fight their own battles. But one thing that I really like about Blaze, and sometimes a lot of these games actually don't utilize it, especially Sonic Racing CrossWorlds, where I was saying it doesn't seem like she gets super angry at all. Blaze from the beginning in Sonic Rush always kind of had somewhat of a temper, and it was fitting for her. She's really calm and collected, but when times get dire and she really needs to step up, she gets super serious and can definitely get angry. And I think that's fitting considering that her whole power is just fire things. Her whole super form is turning into this big burning cat. Like, I feel like in a way she should definitely get angry from time to time. There's two moments where we kind of really notice where she gets upset, and the first time is actually towards Sonic. Sonic really insists that he wants to help defeating Eggman, and to be fair, that's kind of his whole thing, is defeating Eggman, considering that he is also in his dimension. But Blaze really insists on wanting to do it herself and retrieving the Soul Emeralds on her own. But this eventually leads to what we play as a boss fight between Blaze and Sonic. But this obviously ends up leading to them kind of gaining somewhat of a friendship towards each other and honestly just respecting each other as well. Sonic has always pushed Blaze to the very best and to her very limit, and I think Blaze respects that a lot from Sonic, and in the end it really makes her a stronger character in the end. And even at the end of Blaze's story, Sonic respects Blaze's wishes of wanting to do it on her own. We can see her get very upset being that Dr. Eggman has captured Cream, but Sonic puts a lot of trust in Blaze just seeing how strong she really is and how determined she is to get Cream back. So Sonic allows Blaze to go on her own and save her as she wished. But again, I think this just kind of goes into just how much they believe in each other and just how strong each one another is, as Blaze, as we can see, was able to finish the job and save Cream at the end of the day. But in the end of the game, after obtaining all the Soul Emeralds and saving the day and saving Cream, Blaze has run into an issue where she cannot return to her own world, where she is then ambushed by Eggman and Eggman Nega, the Eggman from her dimension, where they basically team up in a huge mech, easily defeating Blaze right away. After that, the two Eggmans basically drain the power of the Soul Emeralds, but then Sonic shows up basically telling Blaze that the true power of the Emeralds, of the Chaos and Soul Emeralds, come from people's friendship. This then allows for one of the most badass moments in the entire series of Super Sonic and Burning Blaze flying off to defeat the two Eggmans. Burning Blaze is one of the coolest transformations that the Sonic series has ever had, but kind of talking about the gameplay of the super fights, I think that this is the most fun super fight that any of the handheld games have ever had. Yeah, it definitely gets some bonus points for me because it is playing Wrapped in Black in the back as the main theme for this boss fight, and is by far one of the best songs that any boss fight has ever had in Sonic. But not only being able to play as the Golden God as Super Sonic, but also using this new transformation as Burning Blaze. At the time, it was not only cool just to see a different transformation that wasn't super, but also just to see all the different abilities she had during this boss fight. And you can instantly see just the chemistry that Sonic and Blaze have with each other whenever they team up, which is super cool. But then at the end of the fight, Sonic and Blaze basically team up, doing this big swirling attack around each other and destroying the two Eggmans, and being one of the coolest attacks in Sonic. But Sonic and Blaze then share somewhat of a bittersweet moment where they're finally kind of truly friends with each other and really respect each other while being in their super forms. But unfortunately, now that the Eggmans are destroyed and the Soul Emeralds are back to their full power, it's time for Blaze to return to her own dimension. Blaze then, when returning to her dimension, now vows to basically protect the Soul Emeralds at all costs. But in a way, after making so many friends in Sonic's dimension, she does worry about them and kind of their safety at the end of the day. But what then I believe is somewhat of a flashback to Sonic basically saying that he has the 7 Chaos Emeralds and that he can take care of his own dimension, with them basically saying that they'll see each other again some other time. For being a portable DS game, Sonic Rush has always had a special place in my heart, and has always hit me right in the feels whenever I get to the end of the game between Sonic and Blaze. Sonic and Blaze has always been one of my 2 personal favorite duos, and is truly a character that even after the debut game of her, you really want her to come back again in the future. But even kind of looking at it now, seeing how underutilized Blaze really is it really kind of hurts to see her so underutilized. Sonic Rush just makes her look like such a cool character. And it kind of sucks considering that this is her debut game, that she never really lives up to another great game like this again. Blaze and Sonic obviously meet up once again in Sonic Rush Adventure, being the sequel to the game of Sonic Rush. But I really love the idea of Sonic and Tails basically going to Blaze's dimension now, with not only encountering different areas, but also encountering completely different villains that Sonic and Tails have never faced off against before, and even making new friends like Marine the Raccoon. And if you want to talk about characters that are underutilized, Marine the Raccoon is basically never used again after Rush Adventure. I know not a lot of people love her, but in a way I feel like she deserves a chance, and in many ways I think Marine and Styx kind of give me somewhat of a deja vu where they act kind of similar and kind of somewhat have similar designs. It'd be cool to see both of them get utilized in the future. And it's cool to see Blaze kind of have a friend in her own dimension. It's really sad to see her in Rush 1 leave Sonic and friends and basically have nobody, so it's cool to see her actually gain a friend from her own dimension in Marine. That is, until she's just never utilized again after this. But for the time being in Rush Adventure, it's great to see. While the entire game is really fun and I definitely recommend playing through Sonic Rush Adventure, the highlight of the game is definitely the end of the game, where once again both of the Eggmans kind of join forces and try to take on Sonic and Blaze. But in the final boss fight, they actually end up facing against what is called the Egg Wizard, and the Egg Wizard is arguably the strongest creation that Eggman has actually ever had. This not only takes the power of Supersonic and Burning Blaze to appear again and destroy it, but there's even moments when they're facing off against the Egg Wizard of Supersonic stating that him and Burning Blaze basically stand no chance against the Egg Wizard. What's actually kind of funny enough is most of the game Blaze actually ends up not really liking Marine, as she thinks that she's irresponsible and annoying, but in the end Marine is actually the whole reason that they probably actually end up defeating the Egg Wizard. As with his staff he's about to unleash this whole laser beam that kind of seems like it's just going to completely destroy Blaze's world. But she then distracts the 2 Eggmans by hitting him with this whatever key blast type of little beam that she hits him with, allowing Sonic and Blaze to basically save the day in the end. At the end of the day, I really like that they decide to explore more of Blaze's dimension during this, and I really would like to see them potentially do this in a mainline game or even a 3D game at that. I think there's just so much to explore within her dimension, and I think there'd be a lot of really cool moments, especially if you put Sonic there more often. I know Blaze travels to Sonic's dimension all the time to visit, but I think that there is a lot of potential here, and it would be cool to kind of see some of Sonic and friends travel there every once in a while. But with not only having some of the coolest powers and the likes of all of her different fire abilities, having some great character development alongside gaining some really cool friends in the likes of Sonic and Cream, but also having some of the most legendary boss fights and battles that the series really has in the likes of the Egg Salamander and the Egg Wizard, and of course brownie points for the incredible music that is featured in Sonic Rush, and really just showcasing what is truly her best personality that she has ever had. Sonic Rush by far is the best version of Blaze by far. None has ever come close to being what Sonic Rush Blaze really is. Well, so with that being said, of course, Blaze in the Sonic Rush series is the true princess in my opinion and the top rank. But that's it. That is my list for ranking every Blaze the Cat. Let me know what you guys agree or disagree with, or what your personal favorite Blaze is in the comments below, even if it is not the Rush series. I'd love to know what you guys think, and also potentially what you guys would like to see from Blaze in the future. While she definitely doesn't get very many chances, every time she does appear, I do really love to see her, and I think she is truly one of the coolest characters in the series. But with that being said, guys, let me know what Sonic character you guys would like to see in the comments below next, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace!